And welcome back to another Gutter Fighting Secrets Tactical Podcast. Today, we have a really special guest coming on. We've got Jeff from Natural Tactical. Now, Natural Tactical was formerly known as the CAR system. Jeff inherited from Paul Castle. He created the CAR system, unfortunately passed away of cancer in 2011. And since then, Jeff has been working hard to keep the heritage and memory alive. And he is doing really cool stuff out there. So I'm not going to really try to hit it too hard, Jeff, because I know that you can really give us a lot better idea of what you're doing out there. But before I let you jump into that, I want to say, bro, thank you for coming on the podcast and welcome on.
Well, thank you very much, Will. It's my pleasure to be here. And, obviously there's some people in your audience that I haven't met yet and whatever. And that's an opportunity for all of us to further a relationship. So thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely, man. So I've had a number of people fascinated at the CAR system, thusly Natural Tactical, especially one of my audience members, Bob. He has been kind of really getting on me to get you on, and he's done a lot of research, actually. So I'm glad that you were able to come on and agreed to come on. I know that you just got back from a trip to the States here. You're actually in Canada. So hopefully your quarantine is going well and you didn't have any hassles across the border.
Yes, I am a cop in Canada, full-time job, and I did just finish a course in Raleigh, North Carolina, which was great. Everything went well. Everybody's healthy. We had people from Seattle, from New York, from Jersey, from Texas, from all over the place, which was very cool.
Now,
currently is COVID situation. Oh, sorry, brother. We just
breaking up quite a bit there.
Wi-Fi problems here.
Yeah. Where I'm actually there's another storm blowing through right now, so hopefully that doesn't interrupt too much, but we'll make the best of it. So your system, Natural Tactical. I mean, can you give us a little bit more information? What's the history behind it? Where has it gone? Where is it going in the future?
Okay, well, thanks for that opportunity. Yes, so Natural Tactical, it's simply put, back in the day, I went and trained with this guy named Paul Castle. I was also training with a martial arts fella named Kelly Worden. And Kelly Worden's out of Tacoma, Washington. He's blade master of modern arnis and very talented in his own right, absolutely. Maybe not firearms based. So the short version of this story, and of course I can dive down for however deep you guys want to go, is that I brought the two together. So I was just the young guy underneath these two, masters, and just trying to bring martial artists a touch of firearms that I was understanding it from Paul Castle, and that's that compressed weapon position, which of course we'll talk about, I'm sure, is the point of this podcast. And then so for martial artists, they were getting some gun handling and understanding. And then for gun guys or people who were trained with firearms or maybe even in, at that time, Paul Castle's CAR system, giving them some hand-to-hand or bridge to the gun, transitioning. I mean, all that stuff that means something, because it's not always just a, well-lit one-on-one environment with two forms of consent or something like that, right? I mean, it's called real life. And so those were called bullet and blades. We were doing those, and the short version, as I said, trying to jump to it, sitting in Paul Castle's living room with Kelly Worden, and they said, you do what we do. We can't do what each other does. You're kind of putting those two things together. Please do that. Continue that, with our mentorship still. And Saber Tactical was the thing that Paul Castle was doing, and Natural Spirit International was Kelly Worden's Worden Defense Systems. Natural Tactical, right, brought together, officially speaking. I guess that was, in 2009. Paul didn't pass for some years after that as well. And that's the short version as to what happened with that. Now, what we actually are doing today and what the 360-degree CQD system has come to mean and evolve to, much more than that. If you'd like me to dive into that, or
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so simply put, if you go to my website, right, if you go to naturaltactical.com, you'll see some information on there. And so, it's just a simple spider branch, right? 360-degree CQD, and then there's these 7 things that it encompasses. One of them is the original CAR system, right? So what people would know as the center axis relock system, originally invented by Paul Castle. He was certainly the main driver. There was 2 other gentlemen that were very, very involved with what became known as the CAR system. And we will actually link to the articles that I wrote with Dr. Greg Vecchi, which are on the website for we wrote them for ILFE, the International Association Firearms, Law Enforcement Firearms Instructors Association. And so that's really got the history in it, those people, why we cite the way we do, what makes it unique, that kind of stuff. And so that system is inside of this 360-degree CQD. It's just that, and as we've talked about offline, words have meaning, right? And so, and what that means, why do we call it a retention reload instead of a tactical reload? Well, because I'm forcing the student to understand, first of all, what does tactical mean in this circumstance? When is it that I do it? It's not intuitive. Why not call it a lockback reload and a retention reload instead of a combat and a tactical? I don't need to add to the cognitive load for the student just to make it something that's always been done or something like that, right? And so since words have meaning and those things of hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, how we actually teach and do things differently, and there we go. I always like to say, Training at the Speed of Life, Volume 1, Ken Murray's book on reality-based training. It's like the Bible on reality-based training. I didn't know how much I didn't know about proper training, about proper instruction until I met him. I was in complete unconscious incompetence. I was doing it, for a long time. I mean, I'm entering my 18th year here as a police officer, trainer, police college, all that kind of stuff, right? And he showed me that I wasn't doing it optimally. I could say it was crappy. I could say it was I certainly felt bad at the time of taking Ken Murray's class. Sorry, I see you're freezing, so I just stopped there. Of taking Ken Murray's class, I said, geez, Ken, I didn't realize that 5% difference that you just showed made all the difference in the world. I feel really bad for what I've been doing and how I've been training people. And he said, well, best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago, right? Second best time to plant the tree is right now. So just how are you going to go forward with this information, make real change, creating a more optimal, and we like using that word, a more optimal environment. Failure equals feedback. What are you going to do with that feedback? What is your method for evaluating what failure actually is, or what, even success equals feedback? And so that started a complete evolution for us on learning to communicate better, hence why studying neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, things like that. I mean, not to freak people out with that or anything like that. It's just a good conversation. But, I can certainly give you some examples on what we talk about when we say owning your trigger, owning your draw stroke. What does that actually mean? Anyway, back to the concept. As you can see, I'm an open loop kind of talker, right? So I've opened a lot of loops here. That central 360 CQD, there's a component is the original CAR system. A component is Ken Murray's concept of reality-based training or proper instruction. A component of 360 CQD is traditional firearms, meaning just simply arms extended, which is, I shoot isosceles, I shoot it quite well. It is a component of what we do. I don't just always hold the gun in the John Wick style, so to speak, something like that. So 360-degree CQD encompasses quite a few things. I know a lot of people like to say that stuff, and I'm not trying to be a unique snowflake here, but I can certainly show you that the proof's in the pudding. We dive down and pride ourselves on the absolute foundation, your understanding, each individual listener, right? Each individual person's understanding of exactly why and how they are doing every piece of the draw stroke, every piece of that, because you're building a richer mental model, your schema. And that way there are less slip and capture errors, which is just fancy mouth words for saying when we tried to do one thing and we end up doing another thing because my attention was interrupted because there's a guy with a gun over there and I'm not sure why my gun isn't going bang when I want it to. And now I break my OODA loop or my attentional process. It's not optimal for that situation, right? That kind of idea. So as you can see, there's more than just a compressed shooting position, although we do that very well and it certainly has its advantages. I'm in a small office right now, a vehicle, something like that. Weapon retention and protection skills. People will automatically just take those teaching blocks and add them to how they, arms extended, do business right away. then the more they kind of see what we're talking about. As I teach entire courses and never even mention that compressed position, right? Just buying people onto the page of seeking more optimal, failure is feedback. How do I go forward with proper understanding? What is my framework for understanding if techniques, tactics, what I'm doing are actually usable in the real world, right? And anyway, as you can see, I like to pontificate away and talk. So,
no, not at all, man. I really am. I'm digging everything that you're saying, and I think it's right on point. Now, we're talking about that squared off position that has become really popular ever since the advent kind of body armor in the modern tactical era. Is that, I mean, I know that I saw on your YouTube channel, you said a couple of different things about that position, but I'm not sure if it was relating more to CQB or CQD. What do you think about that squared off position for the shooting stance?
So just so that words have meaning. So I got a rubber gun here, I think, by that little window. So yeah, being more squarely orientated and what is commonly said as body armor downrange or body armor towards the threat is what we're talking about, versus a more bladed position, which is how I would be in that compressed traditional car 360 CQD position, right? That's what you're asking me?
That is.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, I mean, personally, I use it all the time, but it's just that when we get closer to someone, our gun should get further away from them, right? Because we're putting it in a position where it can get manipulated, things like that. And then just being in a small room like this, well, why would I and how would I stick my arms out? Is it beneficial? Well, anyone who's done any kind of firearms training would know, well, no, it's not. And so they would do, depending on how close they are, some kind of
guys, I think we're just freezing
deal with extreme close quarters. Ah, crap. Sorry, brother.
No,
sorry,
we're
brother.
good.
So I was just saying that.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Okay, all right. Man? So what I'm saying, so to recap, is just that I like arms extended. I do it all the time, right? It's just that when I'm in a vehicle, when I'm close in a weapon retention or when I'm moving towards a threat, a fancy word, of course, because we have to be Gucci as instructors, saying threshold instead of doorway, right? Right. saying aperture instead of window. But when I get close to a place where someone could possibly be there to grab my gun, I compress the gun in, as does everyone. There is an entire system based from the holster out to when you can stick your arms out that this is, right? So meaning I can defend my gun even if I had one hand. And furthermore, then there's some interesting things to do with how we turn our head and sight the gun that eliminates what's called dual sight picture. If you have a moment to, and I'll aim at the camera, press out, take a small amount of time to focus on that front sight, slow squeeze surprise, then do it. Absolutely. But if you don't have the time to do that because you're reacting to something, by turning my head, I then eliminate dual sight picture. And that's the things that you'll read about in the article, or we can dive further into here. By being in a vehicle, I can rotate 360 degrees, switching hands high, right? Because of course it's not safe down below, and now protect myself. There's these unique little areas that people who extend their arms will have a Gucci technique for, but this system works in harmony with your body. And if it works for my 110-pound wife, it works really well for everybody else, right? And it's not a unique flavor. It's an actual system that works out to when you can stick the gun out without backing into traffic or putting the gun into where I can now grab and manipulate it. Hopefully that came through with the Wi-Fi.
No, absolutely. That makes 100% sense. And so it seems to me that what you guys are doing is not taking away from any of the traditional stuff that most of our guys would probably have learned and been trained on, simply adding to that Sewell position where it's kind of tight into the chest, and you're expanding upon that, giving guys new options. Hey, if I'm already in that ready Sewell position, how do I react kind of from there when danger's really close to me?
Yeah, I guess I wish I would have said that. You think me being the instructor would have been able to say what you just said so eloquently. That's exactly it. And so,
hey, come on, get your head in the game, man.
since the gun is in, whether in a muzzle safe position or on a target position, right, ready to fire, we're using our body to both line up the sight, so to speak, as you can see from some of the YouTube videos I've done. I mean, you're shooting very quickly, very accurately, able to maneuver, and then if need be, change in order to optimize moving into another doorway or, you know, something of that nature. There's a lot of application that I never want to show on YouTube because I don't know who's watching it.
Sure.
But yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you're doing a compressed weapon retentional position anyway. If you use your body in this manner, you'll be able to defend because, of course, the more I can bring the gun back, the more I increase the distance. Therefore, the more I increase the time, right, to defend it and to notice action versus reaction, right? That classic martial arts examples that we've all seen, you know, someone touching someone's chest and trying to swat at it and things like that. But yeah, I wish I said it as well as you. You think I would have after all these years.
Well, we can't all be as eloquent as Gutter Fighting Secrets, but hey, I was just born this way. So now the difference between CQB and CQD, I've always kind of heard CQD mentioned in reference to like old school Navy SEAL documentaries and stuff. What is the kind of heritage, so to speak, of CQD versus CQB versus CQC? Yeah.
Okay, good question. It's very simple. Is that CQC, close quarter combat, are the personal skills and drills that one must master in order to, that's typically referred to as that close-in stuff, those personal skills. CQB would then be you and I in a team, a platoon, or whatever, house-to-house kind of idea, the application of the individual skills in a unit for taking over an area, a neighborhood, you know, something like that. And then why we chose CQD, defense, is because it's court defensible. And it's a nice sounding word for when you're trained. As I said, that Ken Murray, that Training at the Speed of Life fella, has these 7. You don't survive an incident unless you survive on 7 levels. And one of those, I mean, of course, is physical. I mean, not surviving is not surviving, but I also don't want to go to jail, right? I also don't want to lose my house in the court process. I also don't want to turn into an alcoholic divorcee because I can't deal with it mentally. Things like that, right? So close quarter defense, changing the name from center axis relock because of the developments of the actual system. There's been quite a few. And then understanding, what does center axis relock even mean? If we change the words to retention reload and lockback reload, those are intuitive. We did that to decrease cognitive load. What is center axis relock? Like, what does that even mean when I say 360-degree close quarter defense? Now we can see that there was a little more of a conceptualization as to what this is. And then once again, court defensibility and justification. I want to survive that as well. I couldn't care less what it's called, but I do want to offer people that as well. So combat versus battle versus defense.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think that that's kind of an interesting topic in itself because there's so many tactical acronyms out there, but when it really boils down to it, I mean, it's kind of what works and what doesn't. Now, speaking about what works and what doesn't, everyone's obsessed with this John Wick's movie, right? I actually haven't seen it myself, but I know I get a lot of comments about it. I know that this system, Natural Tactical, or the car system, was kind of utilized a lot in the John Wick movie. Can you give us kind of any information about that? Did you guys directly train with Keanu Reeves, or what was that like?
Sure. Yeah. Shockingly, I get this question all the time, right?
Not
and
surprised.
so, yeah, we, Natural Tactical, and there weren't and were not involved in the making of that movie, right? And so, although the compressed position is very much like what we do, the interesting thing is that there's a couple of things in the movie that now. I mean, honestly, I like the movies. I mean, I think they're a great time, right? But the movie, what I really like about it is the movie to me is a fight. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure your listeners can agree. I don't care how much you practice jab, cross, hook, uppercut, or triangle choke, or whatever it was. In an actual fight, it never looks that way, right? I mean, I've never had it come out looking the way I did. Dashboard video cam of an arrest in a fight I had, I looked at it. and it was just horrible, right? And so now the movies themselves, there were some things we'll say as platforming as a bent wrist at the front, the use of the gun maybe in front of the eyes, not eliminating dual sight picture, that specifically to the technique maybe weren't exactly fundamentally correct. But the movie's a fight, right? And so, I just watch it for what it is. Now, the caveat to that is that I do know someone who is a old firearms instructor under Paul Castle. Met him recently again. There's some time when we just weren't in communication because he was deployed over there doing things and training. And so the caveat there is that he said that he was involved in a little bit of initial stuff with John Wick 1. I haven't confirmed that or anything, and nor does it really even, it's not something that I guess it matters to me. I mean, it's cool stuff, and I would love to, be involved, I suppose, if someone were to ask what were the fine points and how could things be, what are my 2 cents, but only because I enjoy the movies, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually didn't realize that you guys weren't involved with that. I really would have thought that they would have consulted you. I mean, I understand politics of, the tactical industry is what it is, but that does surprise me. So you guys travel all over the world. I mean, you do train people all over the world. I know that I saw one of your YouTube videos, and you had just gotten back from Brazil training the Brazilian police and I think other units there, and then also did kind of like a day or two open course. What's that like going overseas, training these different organizations, we'll just say? It's got to be kind of exciting stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as a full-time policeman, I don't get much time off. And so my time off is completely packed with doing these things, of which, I actually really love my wife and family, and I do that to be with them. And I'm blessed that way with that support. And yeah, you're right. I mean, last year it was 10 trips, and it was Australia, Brazil, and 9 or 10 for 8 or 3 days, 5 days, or something like that. Yeah, exactly. It's great. It's just a matter of scheduling, and I'd love to do more. I try to bias it by doing at least one, basic instructor course a year that's open enrollment, meaning anyone can show up as long as they have, the proper firearms licenses and background checks and things like that. Because I'm trying to put the proper information out there. I do kind of bias towards doing things for law enforcement and military because they're protecting us. And I want them to have whatever skills I can offer them to add to their toolbox. But like I said, trying to do at least one open course where I get people, from just an agency that doesn't have enough to have a whole course themselves, or people who are now out of the military, lots of guys like that who are doing firearms instruction and, want to add this tool to it or something like that. And so, as I said, yeah, I mean, going to Australia was actually with Ken Murray. So as I mentioned him already, doing the scenario training at the speed of life, right? That textbook. That was just a great opportunity working with the Victoria Police and working alongside some very high-end military guys and stuff like that. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, working with those guys, it's always a very humbling experience. You tend to meet just some of the top characters in the world, I think, when you're working with military guys. It really is. How did you get involved with law enforcement? I mean, was that at an early age or something you've always wanted to do?
Yeah, I guess, as I said, I'm just starting my 18th year now. So the next thing you know, time flies, right? But yeah, I mean, I was always interested. I grew up in martial arts, and that was originally a Japanese art, so going to Japan and training with the Grandmaster and just those kind of cool things. And then met this fellow named Kelly Worden. Met him through a man named Jay Creasy, actually out of Calgary, Canada. And Jay Creasy also introduced me to Paul Castle. And so the next thing you know, I was kind of going forward with that stuff. I always knew that I was interested in those types of things. I mean, I guess to think back that far, I mean, so much time has now passed and the evolution, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a life of service and knowing that, people, there are there are, simply put, there are bad people in the world, and I know that I can deal with circumstances and things as has been proven to myself by doing those things, and just knew that there was a niche there that I could kind of almost thrive in, I guess. And then granted, it was taking its toll on me, and luckily I had my best friend, my wife, was mentioning to me that I wasn't quite the same guy after going to so many incidents, we'll say, and then I started learning more about recovery, and so now I work out less, I train less, but I have optimized, and not to overuse that word, but we love it, the amount of time I put into things, because I'm now putting more time into my recovery, my sleep, my mental, right? Just simply de-stressing, I guess, or however you want to say that. And now I work out less, but I get more out of it because I'm prioritizing my recovery. I train less, 20 minutes max on some dry drills, but that 20 minutes is, we have a whole process talking about it, is absolutely dialed in on not only the format and the process for safety and understanding, but the extremely high level amount of concentration that's happening for that 10, 15, 20 minutes is giving you more usability, is getting you further with quote unquote less than putting in an hour worth of fumbling around or something like that, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it reminds me of that old bodybuilding adage that 1 or 2 good reps is better than 15 bad reps.
Absolutely, yeah. And then the recovery afterward to get back in. So, if I had to say, I'm trying to run to the edge of my capacity every day with whatever that might be, and then recover in a world-class way so that I can do it again. I'm not just interested in helping people thrive in deadly force. I'm interested in helping them do it repeatedly, meaning they recover each time as well, right?
Yeah, and recovery isn't something that, is talked about enough in the tactical field. We're warriors. We kind of want to push ourselves and say, we're good. Let's just keep going. But I'm glad that you're putting it out there, because guys don't spend enough time on recovery. What do you guys work, like 4 on 4 off at the police station or something like that?
Yes. So I was a 2 days, 2 nights in uniform for, I guess it was around 15 years. And now luckily I moved to daytime detective sergeant, right? So I just felt like a new person again. But yeah, so that recovery piece, that recovery protocols and understanding what exactly that means to us, is yet another piece of those 7 things that make up 360-degree CQD, right?
Yeah. And by the way, working nights and stuff like that, brutal. I don't know how guys do it. So when we're talking about NLP specifically, and this is something I wanted to get into more with you, because I think it kind of lends itself into the recovery portion of it. I don't know if guys out there are familiar with NLP. Not everybody is. Could you give us kind of a brief introduction to it for those of guys out there who might not be ultra familiar with it?
Certainly, yeah. I'm not a guru in neuro-linguistic programming myself, although I've taken some courses in it, and I understand it's, I guess some people would describe it as a pseudoscience. Honestly, it doesn't really matter if it's a pseudoscience or not. Does it work, right? A model is only as useful as it is, a model is only as relevant as it is useful. So you don't happen to have like a rubber gun in front of you, do you?
I don't.
No, okay, all right. So I would just draw someone's attention to what's the best way to describe something or talk about something is through an example, right? And so maybe I'll try it just with me, but the idea being is that maybe you're teaching a draw stroke. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 of a draw. Well, when someone puts their hands from stage 2 to stage 3, where the hands start to touch, I'll ask them to do that, and I'll say to them, where do your hands touch? Now, neuro-linguistic programming, the concept is that the map is not the territory, or that words have meaning. And just because you say to me, my right hand touches my left hand, okay, I think I know what that means, but I have no idea what that actually means to you, and you may only have a very surface understanding of that concept on itself. So I'm going to really dive in for the next minute here. Hopefully your listeners find some appreciation of this, because I hate to bore them. But so someone will say to me, let's just say that their hands touch, and I'll say, where do your hands touch? And they'll say, well, these fingers touch these fingers here. Okay, well, is that aim small, miss small? Not at all, right? That's a very large area touching a very large area, very ambiguous. And I'll say, okay, well, what finger touches first, or what part touches what? And they'll say, well, and they might have to start thinking about it. Well, how long have you been shooting a gun? Well, 20 years I've been shooting, 25 years. Do you actually own your draw stroke? Well, what does that mean? Do you actually own your trigger press? And what's the worst case scenario? Okay, so let's just think about who in your life are you sworn to protect? My young daughter or something like that. Hostage negotiation shot, right? I've only got this much area to shoot at. Her head's right in front. If there were a genie, or even better, the Conan, Crom the god, right, was there that day saying, I will give you your trigger press, but there's 1,000 trigger presses here. Which one is yours, Will? You have to tell me. I'll give you your trigger press, the one that'll work for you for that, saving your daughter's life in those horrible high-stakes circumstances. But which one of these 1,000 is it? Do you know it that deeply, richly, and understandingly, where the finger goes, how the finger moves and travels, building that mental model enough to actually take that shot? And people go, well, and I go, that's it. You've already paused. That's it. You don't own it. And so we got these 5 drills that bring out your complete conceptual understanding of your trigger press, and now you own it going forward. Well, the same thing with the draw, so because I can show that one here with that live fire. So now, where exactly does your hand touch your hand? Well, the first place it does, I guess, would be that first finger, because it's further forward. Can you see that all right?
Yep.
Because it's further forward. Oh, okay, so it's actually this knuckle touches first. Oh, okay, and where does it touch? And they'll usually tell me, over here. Okay, so draw the gun. Now bring it back and stop. And they'll look down. Oh, crap, it actually isn't even where I thought it was. Oh, well, that's interesting. So you certainly don't own this at all. Where is it exactly? And then I'll say, okay, so where on that knuckle? Is it the top, the middle, or the bottom? Is it the right, the middle, or the left? And they'll take a Is it where exactly on this hand? Is it this space, the crease, the joint? Where? In the middle, the top, the bottom. And they'll put another little dot. So under the concept of aim small, miss small, right? And so now what you're doing is you're bringing their attention to a rich mental model of a small point coming together. If they can now have such an in-depth understanding of where those 2 hands meet. Oh, I'm getting an unstable internet connection. You still got me, brother?
Yeah, we're good, man.
Okay, so of where those 2 hands meet, there is less room for error when their attention is elsewhere, right? So they're going to hopefully get closer to where it needs to be. They're going to be able to put in less training time and still create the synapse, still create the mental model and the actual motor program that is more specific for them, because it's a richer, deeper understanding of it. Then we do that for stage 1. We do that for stage 3. We do that for stage 4. We do that for indexing of magazines and manipulations. We do that for all this stuff. It just builds out what you didn't know you didn't know. Yeah. Now, even cooler, at the very end of it, when they finally have those dots and they think they know it, I look at them and I say, now, how do you know that's correct? Right? So once again, I'm using words to dig down. I'm using what's called the meta model, META model, using language to clarify language, to dive into, because once again, I'm not going to be there for your fight. And we all say that. And that's why I travel and train with tier 1 operators, because I know they've been there and I want to do the techniques that they've done because they're the guys who've done it and I want to live too. But how do I know that shit's going to work for me?
Right.
Seriously. So now that they've got even just a concept of where their hands meet, I ask them, how do you know that's correct for you? How do you know that's going to help you handle recoil, right? Recoil control. How do you know that's going to help you recoil management, handle the recoil onto new targets? I don't. Okay, well then stick your arms out, shoot, find where recoil is handled the best, then back your hands up slowly, and then they go, shit, it's actually over here. And now we move those dots, but the whole point is that I have now shown you a process that you can use every time. Do that 4 or 5 times when you go to the range, and now you are starting to own to a rich, deep understanding and level your draw stroke, and you know the process for when you have a glove, a different sized gun, a hurt finger, a whatever, right? Because you're the one who has to get that. If I was on a team with you and I asked you to, did you go check the 0 on your weapons? What I really want to know is do you know how to literally dot the I with a 9mm, not just that, the thing fires or not, and your line of sight and bore, right? Does that make sense? I want to know that that guy knows how to take that shot and is confident with that exact tool that he's carrying when he's sitting in a Suburban next to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's great stuff, man. I mean, I've seen a lot of instructors out there. I've never heard anyone say something quite as concise as that. And I really think that the way that you guys are teaching this stuff is really brilliant. I mean, NLP and all of that, I'm sure assists, but it also kind of takes the individual instructor to really break things down in a scientific enough way that everybody could kind of understand it.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that you appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, hopefully that small example is showing and telling. It's not about our egos. It's about what we can get real results. And I know a lot of people say that, but at the same time, what is your method for evaluating whether or not that is working or not? How do you know that's right for you? That kind of thing. So yeah, cool. Anyway, so I geek out on that stuff, and that's my passion.
Hey, listen, man, that's probably everybody's passion that's listening to this podcast right now, too. Now, speaking about egos, you mentioned Special Forces guys. How many guys out there, are there any units that you know of, and I'm sure, again, don't get into any specifics here, but are there any units that you know of that have actually adopted the natural tactical system and are currently kind of teaching it amongst themselves?
Yeah, so there's 2 versions of that answer. Basically, there's a lot of people doing something similar, and I wish that I could get to them to do what I just did, especially because that compressed position is my forte. What got me my work permits in the US and all that cool stuff, right? So, I would love to add the specifics to it, and I think that there's a lot of, and maybe they just don't know the little areas to sharpen and things like that, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I think that there's a lot of brilliant minds out there when it comes to this scientific fighting type stuff. I've sat down with a number of them, Greg Thompson from SOCP being one of them, and it's always impressive to hear you guys explain kind of your thought process and the way that everything kind of works simultaneously, like you're saying, with the hand-to-hand into the firearms, CQD, close defense, even into pushing it all the way out there and getting it out there. It's really fascinating to look at this stuff as not only simply, okay, like training to, one day, Lord forbid, you get in a gunfight, survive it, hopefully, but modern samurai type of training. I really think that guys out there, especially like yourself and, other warriors, you could think of them as modern samurai. I guess my question to you, Jeff, would be, where do you want Natural Tactical to go from here? And also kind of where do you think that the science of fighting is going to be going kind of in the future in a broad sense, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I could go a number of directions with that answer, right? The science of fighting, the concept as to, I guess, checking an ego, or just, maybe realizing that I certainly just didn't know what I didn't know. There's a lot of that. At any moment, just simply saying and I have changed and manipulated this system. Every year, the course is slightly different. And I give credit to Rick Furr, Ken Murray, Bob Anderson, Kelly Worden, these people who I steal little bits from and just add them to it. And I know that I mean, it's I guess it's almost like a romanticized vision or view of where people are always saying, I take what's useful, quoting a Bruce Lee or something like that, absorb what's useful. But what is your framework for understanding what is useful or not? Knowing I don't care what necessarily if you can do it. Do you understand the principles if you're going to then go out and teach it? Because you're teaching it to people who are not you. And that's where we have that really unique flavor where people come back, like they originally come and want to learn a compressed position, but the next thing you know, I'm hired to fly out and talk to their entire company of realtors because of how I use words and what that means for optimizing performance. I'm there, and they're taking instructor development from me because that's what I do, right? I mean, we're talking about being a professional communicator, right? And so I think if it comes to sex, drugs, rock and roll, fighting, everything else, there's nothing new under the sun. I'm sure I'm not going to create anything new. So just trying to dive back into what has been done, understanding and listening a lot to these people who have been there, done that, who have, all that time, both in training and in operational experience, and trying to unpack that, then how to take that information, simplify its conveyance to other people, right? Knowledge builds on knowledge. So, I mean, if I was ever going to teach anything to anyone, I need to find out what they know already, because I'm going to then instruct it in a manner, neuro-linguistic programming kind of concepts, so that that knowledge builds on what they already know. And I think that instructor development, or that instructor concept, how to teach, is one of the main missing components. And then going forward with the concepts of science, absolutely. How do we best learn? What are the principles of adult learning? What are the principles of, we've got these things just on the course we just did, where I provided tests and lesson plans and all sorts of things. Not that I wanted them back. It was all because learning must be effortful. And I know that I can produce a course where at the end of those 5 days or 3 days, you are performing at a very high level. But I would rather have you performing at a lower level and explain to you why, because by doing it that way, making it so that you have to think back, reference in the book, how did that go, talk to someone else, do another video, that effortful process, that it's been proven, right? This is Harvard, this isn't me, that months later now, if we were going to a test time, those who were performing really well at the end of the course are now performing very poorly. Those who were performing less than them to begin with, months now later, are still performing of adult learning, and how that makes sense. You have to relate what you're learning and doing to knowledge and understanding that you have, whether it's right or wrong. And so anyway, so I think these are the things that are going to give us the best foot forward with whoever we're instructing. Really creating a community is what I'm concerned with, creating a tribe of people who aren't concerned with failure. They're knowing failure is feedback. In fact, success is feedback. How are you going to define it and go forward in an optimal manner now, right? That's what I'm concerned with. And so anyway, yeah, so just excites me to have these kinds of conversations, a winning conversation to have as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and me as well. I really feel that that's 100% true. I think that, like you said, there's nothing kind of new under the sun when it comes to combatives. It's already been done, a lot of it. You can find out new fancy ways of, manipulating the body and stuff, sure. But at the end of the day, I think the real advancements that we're going to be seeing is kind of the way that it's taught, the way that it's explained. How do we make a soldier better? How do we make a police officer better? And how do we do it quicker? And that's something that's always fascinated me. Now, do you think that really a large portion of how do you get somebody better at what they're doing more quickly is through the way that it's explained and the words that we use, i.e. NLP?
Yeah, and certainly not just to say NLP and that alone, but I would exactly agree with that. Ken Murray says crawl, walk, run, assess, and it's got to be in that order. Knowledge builds on knowledge. We don't learn by thinking. We learn by doing. How do we create an environment with 30 people there where I put 5 more pounds on your bar today, and it's a different 5 pounds than that person right next to you? And that's what a lot of people don't understand how to do when they show up to a course. It's not even about the round count. It's about, do you understand what you're doing and why? Because if you don't, how many times have you gone to a course? And I say this to people, and then I do the owning your grip stage 2 to 3 thing. And they're like, I've never even thought of that before. Well, no offense, but what good is more rounds? Right? No, right? Then what? And we haven't even done the one about your trigger. I mean, just imagine the understanding about knowing how to put a bullet, understanding that your trigger isn't one thing, knowing that it composes more things, and how you can manipulate those if they're not optimal, or how you can manipulate those to get something better out of it. I mean, that's worth the price of admission alone. It's like the first drill we do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree 100% with that. Now, we can be as precise as we want about breaking down, shooting stuff, but you have more experience in this than I. When it comes down to it, an adrenaline pump situation, stuff just happened, let's react. I mean, how accurate can somebody with a moderate level of training expect to be? I mean, how does all of this stuff kind of translate into that actual situation? Boom, I just got hit on the head, now I need to react, type of realistic situation?
Yeah, this is a really good question and conversation to have. And so, yeah, how well does it translate? Well, first of all, I would gladly take away whatever tool is what you think your best tool is. So if that's the jab or the snap kick to the groin or the gun thing or whatever it is, I gladly take away your best tool in order to give you one thing, and that's the ability to think your way through a critical incident. Pause for effect, right? So yes, I understand. You just got hit, and or whatever is happening. I mean, a car accident, sliding on the ice you've never driven before. I don't know, whatever. Insert thing here. But if you see something happening and you do not believe you have the tools and the talent to deal with it, you're going to go to anxiety. If you see something happening and you believe you have the tools and the talent to deal with it, even if you're not correct, you're going to go to exhilaration, especially if there's some kind of stakes on that. And I don't mean that using a gun in a deadly force incident against another human should be exhilarating. What I'm saying, though, is performing well under those huge amounts of stress, pressure, circumstances is exhilarating. Just thinking about it, right? You get goosebumps because there's an emotional reaction there. And so how do we get, if I were to ask you, Will, where does confidence come from? So where do you think confidence comes from? No answer is wrong, of course. This is your interpretation.
Well, I think confidence comes from positive experience.
Okay, so let's talk about that. NLP kind of technique, right? So let's talk about that. It just so happens my father-in-law is a silver medalist in the Olympics, right? He's one of those guys that deadlifts with bent elbows and is just gifted, and not that he didn't earn it, but
we're just breaking up here.
One arm pull-up at the age of 6'4". Oh, sorry.
Wow.
I was just saying that I've spoken to Olympic level athletes, right? So I've talked to gold medal athletes, and they have said they're nervous going into another competition, yet they just won a gold medal a month or two ago. They're the best in the world. So I submit that perhaps confidence doesn't come from past performance, right? Or maybe not all of it.
Okay.
What if we were to say confidence and competence? And that's a loop we're trying to keep circling. So confidence promotes competence, and competence in my weapon handling promotes confidence. And confidence, again, promotes better conceptualization and therefore better practice and therefore more understanding. But what's inside of that confidence-competence loop, in my humble opinion, are the things that you are telling yourself about yourself.
Yes.
Right? And we don't talk about that stuff. So that's why, it is how we do our courses. Well, people say, I came here to learn how to be a better gunfighter. I'm leaving here learning how to be a better person. That's awesome, and that's the people I want, because you're going to be an armed citizen saving my daughter in the next mall shooting, which is why I'm passionate about doing what I'm doing, and going forward with that. So how do we create that in training? Well, it depends on where that individual person is at. It depends on where that individual person and their beliefs, their previous knowledge may be not correct or may be correct, but we have to go forward with it in that capacity. And that's why, I pride myself on that ability to, in a group of people, start delivering individual-based instruction in a group, so to speak. And that's why, people want to do private stuff, because we get so much further, so much faster, because it's dialed in specifically for you. It's not just this technique. If you don't believe the technique works, you're never going to use it when you think someone's life's on the line, heaven forbid you or your family. What good was it, right? So, these are the conversations and the things that I think are actually going to lead to more optimal performance down the road. And if we don't have them, well, no offense, then you're not optimizing your ability for future performance.
Well said. So before we start wrapping up here, I just want to say, like, there's a lot of people right now at this point in time who haven't been in the tactical field before. They've never even thought about, owning a firearm, but are starting to kind of get into this and say, I don't know what's going on in 2020, but we should get kind of into this and get prepared. To those kind of guys and girls out there, what would you say, what's a good place to kind of start on your self-defense journey to get to a progressively better and better, I guess you could say, place?
Well, I mean, that's a very broad thing, of course, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a martial artist. I train. I love that stuff, working with the body. But, firearms are self-defense, really. So, and maybe I'm not sure where people are at in their family situations and can they even have guns in the house or not, or on and on. But, the tool, right? The tool itself is nothing without the ability and the mindset to use it. And so, a lot of places, I mean, like I have a required reading list and a lot of that stuff is just a conceptualization for, I love that movie Ronin, if there is a doubt, there is no doubt. Right? That's the second thing they teach you, right? Yeah. So do something, meaning the will to act. I'll often just make a joke out of it, like, the ability to destroy a planet pales in comparison next to the power of the Force, right? Classic Star Wars. But at the same time, the ability to do something physically and have these skills, because I went to kickboxing or I went to the gun range, doesn't mean anything if mentally you are not able to think your way through a critical incident. You're not going to act. And so I reference back to Ken Murray's book. He says there's this three-legged stool, or this concept of three things. There's do you have the skills themselves, right? And so you need to get those. What area can you go to in your neighborhood to start getting those skills first? How do you know those skills are going to be the ones that are going to benefit you? Maybe not to come down on any martial art or whatever, but maybe a lot of time put in there isn't going to be necessarily what's optimal for you for defending yourself when someone comes into your house, right? But so do you have those skills themselves? Then some people will say stress inoculation. Simply put, there's a lot of very crappy done reality-based training out there. I didn't know I was doing it as well until I met Ken Murray. But people doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be better. And we've proven that. And then the third thing is what he terms killing enabling factors. And all he means by that is under the moment of shoot or not shoot, so to speak, are you going to think thou shalt not kill? Because you had to reconcile something with your religion. Is it thou shalt not murder? Have that conversation. Are you going to think, oh man, I'm going to lose my house? Are you going to think, oh no, and we want to make sure that we dial in ahead of time those things so that we're actually going to think, act, prepare, and understand. And so I think some of the best, that's why I always say, just email me. Like, let's have a conversation. I'm sure you're the same way. You're building community with people, right? Where are you at? What's driving you to finally change your diet? You're 300 pounds. Why are you finally or you finally had a heart attack, or you finally had what's your moment? What's your moment that you're taking control of your personal safety? Because you saw the riots and the protests and oh my goodness. Well, then let's use that, but let's not have you fear-mongering either, and I mean, these are higher quality of conversations. This is what, I'm hoping that, comes from this podcast. I get, as usual, a bunch of emails and I meet a bunch more great people, right? So.
And that's what this is really about too, is these podcasts about not only putting the information out there for people, but starting that conversation and getting it out there. And I want people to be asking these questions, not only the advanced guys, which is mostly who watches our stuff, but also some beginners out there as well. So I always think that's important to kind of touch on, where do we start when we're in the middle? Where do we go from there? And then even when we're advanced, how do we make ourselves better? Because I think you would agree, Jeff, that all of those tier one operators that we've probably ever met, they never stop learning and they never stop getting better at whatever it is they do. So,
yeah.
Sorry, not to. No, yeah. For sure. And, I just want to ask you, for guys out there who want to get in touch and want to learn more about Natural Tactical and, the system that you guys are teaching, and then also just how you teach, how do guys get in touch with you? Your website, your email, all of that good stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. Well, I'm sure I'll send you the links in that, but
Great.
the website is naturaltactical.com, right? Just spelled that way. I mean, there's a contact form on there. My email's very easy, jeff@naturaltactical.com.
Perfect.
Just simply reach out. I pride myself on, I'm just as busy as everyone else, but I will get back to you personally. There's those articles and other things on the website for more info. And, there's all sorts of areas in that, but certainly easy to reach out.
Outstanding, guys. And all of Jeff's links are going to be right down here in the description. So don't be afraid to go ahead and check out the website. I know that there is some really excellent information and resources on there. I personally checked them out, and I wouldn't vouch for or recommend anything that I didn't think was worthwhile. And Natural Tactical, honestly, it is extremely worthwhile. And I'm hoping by next year, next time one of your 5-day courses runs around, Jeff, I'm going to be right there myself. So I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, training with you in person, and just catching up a little bit more. But I want to say, man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You say that you are good at getting back to people. You got right back to me, and I appreciate that. So, your interpersonal skills are definitely something that I think makes an instructor even a little bit more than an instructor. Just being warm and friendly, like you have been and are. It really kind of goes above and beyond the call of just natural business and going right into the area of kind of like, okay, I want to come train with this guy. So, bro, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Yeah. That warm and fuzzy feeling, so to speak. Don't mistake my kindness for weakness, as they always say. But
yeah, exactly.
If there's any questions or if you get them from your listeners and viewers, of course, I didn't really talk about the technique, I guess, or something like that. We can always do that in the future, another one, or just let me know. Yeah, I'd be happy to. That would
actually be my next question, bro. Every time I have a good podcast with somebody, I invite them back on for a second time, especially if anything happens that is relevant or even, just to go further into this. I try to leave these about an hour just because it's easier that way. So hopefully next time you come on, we could actually do some techniques and show a little bit more about the system itself.
Yeah, whatever the viewers want, that's fine with me, man. All right.
Appreciate it. Well, guys, until next time, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense, and I will catch you in the next Tactical Podcast. Cheers, mother flowers.